Iowa's News Now Sports has your all-access pass to all things Hawkeyes. This is Eye on the Hawks.
We've had some interesting, circumstances, certainly in November last half decade, but that's football too.
Yeah, that's football. We've heard that one before, and it's been great football for Iowa over those last 5 years. 18-2 as we enter the second to last month of the calendar year over the last 5 years, and getting ready for the battle for the Heartland Trophy. Welcome to our Wednesday edition of Eye on the Hawks, live on the Iowa's News Now YouTube channel at 1 o'clock on this Wednesday. Mitch Fick, Owen Sebring, Mike Howell here. If you're watching on the YouTube channel, you see right there how you can follow along. If you haven't been following along through this whole journey, Eye on the Hawks on X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it, and of course the Iowa's News Now Instagram channel, getting some reels up there as well. Lots to talk about today, taking a glance at the Badgers as they come into Kinnick Stadium, first night game of the season in Iowa City. See if that defense can continue that bounce back after the MSU loss a couple weeks ago. We're going to highlight one of the members of that defense who, let's face it, nobody was really talking about coming into 2024. Maybe had some glimpses there, but he's certainly making a name for himself and putting Urbandale on the map as if they're not on the map already. One of the fastest growing communities in central Iowa. But we start, of course, with quarterback. It's official. Brendan Sullivan, your starter on Saturday as Iowa takes on Wisconsin. Cade McNamara out with an injury. Kirk Ferentz confirming a concussion for number 12. He will still be a captain. Sounds like he's still working through just being able to sit through meetings as far as we can tell. But Cade is hurt. Sully's QB1. Jackson Stratton, the transfer and walk-on from Colorado State, your QB2. After that, sounds like maybe somebody who's played quarterback at some point could be next in line. But let's hear from Brendan Sullivan, Logan Jones, and Kirk Ferentz as we look ahead to life with number 1 under center.
Yeah, it goes both ways. You got to take the confidence and take the things that you did well from that game, but also you kind of got to forget about it and move on because this is a new team, new game, and being a starter is a little different than coming in halfway through. So take both from it.
When you got a guy who can break away and run for forever, it seems like, which is what he was doing this past Saturday, it definitely opens things up, and it's harder on defense to have to guard inside zone, outside zone, than a quarterback who can possibly pull it, and then the pass game as well, right? So we have a lot of opportunities to do some things on Saturday.
When he got here in June, one thing I'm really impressed with is the fact that he got here that late and was able to learn, has been able to learn as quickly as he did. And that's part of the benefit of being an older guy, too, and he's a smart guy. But he just works hard. You go watch the guys in the summer program, and he's leading the group in sprints, those types of things. And basically anything they're doing, he's going full speed and really getting after it and doing a great job. And to your point, not overly boisterous, but just, he's a guy who commands respect through performance. And I think, it seems very apparent that players really like him. They support him. Obviously, same thing with Cade. He's a captain. And so, you got two guys there that are really working at it and doing a good job there. But
we've seen the red zone success. We saw success coming in for Cade on Saturday against Northwestern. What are your expectations? What is a successful day for Brendan Sullivan making his first start for Iowa this upcoming Saturday?
Biggest thing I think is just playing mistake-free. That's what we got out of Cade for a lot of the season, was not setting the world on fire, but playing mistake-free and just leading this team as they continue to win games early in the year. And I think that's all that they kind of need out of Brendan Sullivan. He doesn't need to throw for 250 yards. As long as he can get maybe 100 yards passing, no interceptions, maybe throw for a touchdown, maybe run for a touchdown, keep things steady on the ground, open things up for Caleb Johnson. That's, I think, all that this Hawkeye offense needs to make a successful day out of Brendan Sullivan.
Yeah, I was thinking about this, and I was trying to think what kind of stat line he should have for a successful day. But I think it's a lot simpler than that. I think it's just win the game. I mean, if he has 300 yards passing and the Iowa loses, what's going to be the conversation then, Well, I don't know, actually. Not great. But I would like to see 200 yards of total offense, rushing and passing, or more than that. I don't think they often passing yards just because he's that dual threat quarterback, and he does bring another dimension to this offense that, you could say through 7 games was one-dimensional with KJ.
I learned a little bit about maybe understanding what Iowa can be, should do, if you want to label it like that, through Penn State this past weekend, ironically against Wisconsin. Drew Aller gets knocked out, doesn't play the second half. He's got an injury. Sounds like maybe game time decision coming up for a huge game against Ohio State coming up. Bo Pribula is not going to set the world on fire through the passing attack either for the Nittany Lions. He's a darn good runner. And he does a lot of what Brendan Sullivan is expected to do with this offense, where it's instead of trying to be balanced, let's just go all in on rush and know that Bo presents a matchup issue, motion, however you want to paint it, to opposing defenses there, kind of like what Brendan does. And now there's this talk, if you're a Nittany Lion fan or following Penn State, of, listen, Drew Aller's been the guy, but does Bo fit a little better with what they want to do on offense? And that's, now the hand is forced here in Iowa City. It really feels like that is what Iowa is planning to do. Hey, Brendan might not elevate the passing game in a big way, but let's put a lot of eggs in the rush basket because we know Iowa can do that with KJ and a good offensive line, and Kamari and Jazz have gotten in there and done things too.
The only reason I say that it takes a little more than just winning the game is because, boy, they won a lot of games last year with Deacon Hill. Deacon Hill won a lot of games for Iowa football last year, but that wasn't exactly making the fan base happy and wasn't exactly showing up on the stat sheet. So it takes maybe a little more than a win just to at least satisfy what the fans are wanting out of that quarterback spot.
Well, that is true. I think you have to give, and I know Iowa fans, it's been 4 years, you have to give a little bit of leeway to someone making his first start in your jersey. I think expecting, like you said, 250 or 300 yards or something on top of a win in your first start, I feel like that's unfair. Maybe fans feel differently. Maybe they think he could do, they can do all that stuff. I just think, K did have that first 7 games and we didn't see it from him,
Yeah.
At least consistently. And I don't think you should judge him in one game. Like, I'm just afraid if he doesn't do that and they lose, if Cade's healthy the next week, they're going to give the reins back to Cade, which I think this should be, let's see what Sullivan has this last 4 games, and let's see what happens with Iowa's offense.
Fans are reasonable above all else. I think we've learned that. We even saw that at the Yankees-Dodgers game last night. Fans are reasonable.
Yeah, keep them out of Game 5. Let's also temper expectations. Iowa is averaging less than 140 passing yards a game. Brendan Sullivan has cracked 180 passing yards a game once in his entire career. That was that big Maryland game that everybody points to. The Iowa passing attack is not going to start dropping 250, 300. It's been, that Nate Stanley stat went out there. It's been 5 years since Iowa had a 300-yard passer. Unless we're going 4 verts and starting to hit guys deep, that's probably not going to happen here. I think, again, manage expectations. As much as stats and people want to look at those and dissect and what is happening there, turnover free and a W. That's probably going to do it. We've already seen he can run a little bit. It's the main catalyst for what he can bring to the offense. Don't fumble. Don't have a Washington scenario. Not to immediately start dampering, but the one time we've seen a quick little pressure type situation, he's fallen down and throws the ball away, and it's almost a turnover. Luckily, his knee was down in that goal line situation against Washington. Don't panic. That's what I really want to see is what is he going to do if there is adversity? Do you have a panic play like that, or do you stay calm and play within yourself and do what you've shown you've been able to do? That seems like the outlier, but the light's on, man. You've been in this situation before. It's a little different situation, though. Are you going to be able to handle it? It sounds by all accounts he has and has walked in since June and really made himself comfortable, but that's the stuff to keep an eye on. But if you play mistake-free and keep the ball in Iowa City, you're going to do just fine.
I do want to see what kind of arm strength he has, because I want to see him take a shot. And that's something this offense was missing. And outside of that first pass from Cade to Seth Anderson last week and maybe the Jacob Gill touchdown in Illinois State, they really haven't stretched the field. And, I totally agree. 250, 300, you're not going to get that passing yard with this offense. But can you get chunk plays down the field and kind of present something new to the two defenses out there? That's what I'm hoping to see. And if you don't, and again, if it's that 200 total yards where maybe 80 of it's rushing, and just keeping drives alive, that's fine too.
Yeah, and they have a chance. I think that this is an offense that once they do maybe open things up a little more, there could be a lot of passing yards piled up through plays like we saw out of Johnny Pascuzzi last Saturday, where maybe there's a short dump off that goes for 30, 40 yards. I could see, again, with Brendan's mobility, with Caleb out there, there's a chance that they could open things up more for a lot more pass plays like that. You've got a lot of guys, Jacob Gill and Rhys Vanderzee, guys, Rhys is not going to be playing this weekend, but guys who can catch it on the outside and make a lot of yardage downfield.
Yeah, Rhys Vanderzee is going to be out, was in a boot at the end of the game against Northwestern. Addison Estrenga continues to be out. Sounds like Bo Stevens may be good to come back, but there is a little bit of an injury situation. Obviously, Cade out as well. So something to keep an eye on there. It certainly helps if your offense has a short field because the defense was able to hold after a long punt. And let's talk about Rhys Dakin, who, listen, we talked about the bumps and the growing pains that were going to happen early in the year. He has been terrific for the vast majority of the last 3 quarters of the season, averaging almost 45 yards a punt since the Iowa State game. We talked about that, not getting those deep punts to pin the Cyclones back late. Since that game, 48.6 yards a punt. He's put 20 of 42, almost half his punts so far this year, inside the 20. Rhys Dakin showed up on a Tuesday to talk to the media in Iowa City, and we asked Kirk about him as well.
From game 1 to about game 3, I was sort of just, finding my feet, trying to get more comfortable out there, and I definitely feel like after game 3, I definitely feel a lot more comfortable and a lot more loose, not as tense. I'm happy with how I'm progressing. Definitely not perfect, still got lots to work on, but I'm pretty happy with where I'm at the moment. I feel a lot more comfortable out there in the pocket, and I also feel a lot more loose out there. I feel like, I don't really worry about getting blocked or one thing I have sort of been focusing on is just focus on hitting a good ball rather than, kicking it 50 yards, 45 yards.
Rhys, it's kind of funny. I was thinking about that in the shower this morning. I don't know why. I think of weird things in the shower all the time. But I was thinking about, what he was doing and some other options we might have had as a punter. And you never know, you just never know. And then now you're talking about Australia, which has been good to us, but it doesn't mean every guy that punts that grew up in Australia is going to be, pay off. I think the thing I've been most impressed with him is just his maturity and his ability to really practice well, which for young guys it's not usually that easy, but he's really serious out there on the field. He works at it. He's not happy when he hits a bad one. He'll occasionally do that. He hit a couple this morning. But it upsets him a little bit, but he gets on to the next one. He doesn't dwell on it and, act like a baby. And so I think his focus and his ability to prepare for a young guy it's been impressive. And I don't think I've ever been around where a guy put 4 6-yard liner in. I'm not sure some of those got spotted correctly. A couple might have been 5 or 4, but nonetheless, you get the idea. I mean, that's 4 really good punts, and that's just a huge swing in the game in terms of field position. And so, it's exciting to think that he can get better, and I think he will.
Yeah, he had a day against Northwestern. Obviously, gave up the late punt return touchdown. That was the final touchdown for Northwestern that day. Had the punt return touchdown, which was the game after Iowa State against Troy. Kind of a low kick, but really since that kick, you can make an argument. Rhys Dakin's been money on every single punt he's had.
Yeah, and he's got a background. I kind of asked him about his tackling abilities, if that's something he's trained in. And he's like, hey, I come out of a Australian rules football background, so I know a thing or two about putting a body on somebody. So he's much like Drew Stevens. He's looking forward to getting a chance to lay the wood on somebody one of these days.
When you asked him that question, he said something to the effect of like, I want to show. I'll show him what I got. I'll lower a shoulder and show him what I got. Something like that, which is obviously, it's a different mindset than an American punter, I think. You think about the American punters, and they're usually not, at least the ones that played in high school, they're not like the physical players unless they're playing both ways.
I mean, if you're talking about just his attitude here in Minnesota, Owen got this great shot after the flag and the flex right there if you're watching on the YouTube channel. Shout out to Luke Elkin, by the way, who had his 4th career solo tackle over the week, and I think we both got good shots of that. Just you can get the long snapper involved. We'll support that as well. Listen, the comparisons to Torrey are natural. They're both from Australia. Torrey is established, and several others before him.
Number 9.
Punting is winning. Number 9. A lot of similarities. Torrey had 8 games in his freshman year, that COVID season in 2020. I think Rhys's numbers are about what he was doing, if not maybe a little better. I think he's obviously going to have more punts, but I think they're about even in terms of the number of punts they've already had. They're right there. Torrey was averaging 44.1 yards on 40 punts with a long of 61. Rhys is at 42 punts, averaging, again, just a hair under 45. He's really improved over the last 5-6 games. And Torrey was Big Ten Conference Punter of the Year that year. Not saying that's what Rhys is going to do, but boy, he's turned a corner certainly in October, getting into November. When you want to be playing your best football, as we heard, he has really made himself at home. And boy, he showed off on Saturday against Northwestern. He had some great ones.
Yeah, and he mentioned that after that third game, he feels a lot more comfortable. I just looked at it. In Big Ten play, he's averaging 46.9 yards a punt.
Wow, that's awesome.
And if that was his average throughout the whole season, that'd be third in the country.
Yeah.
Right now, I think he ranks around 15, 17 kind of ish, just because those first two games were not as solid as that. But you can just see the trajectory. It's maybe going a little faster than we thought. You know, with Torrey in the NFL and punting for the past 4 years. The one thing he did say too, when he talked about watching Torrey, is he doesn't have an NFL team. You know, Rhys, if you're watching, you do not have to be a Bears fan just because Torrey plays there. I'm telling you, you don't want to do it.
He said he kind of likes the Dolphins. Got cool colors, yeah. They've got the colors, so I think he might want to go play for Miami one day. He said the weather down there is good, and they got a good punter coming in this weekend. Another Aussie punter coming to Kinnick Stadium that plays for Wisconsin. All-time great Big Ten name out of the Wisconsin punter, Atticus Bertrams, is coming into Iowa City.
That's a college football 25 creative player name that's gotten a lot of press. Of just those names seem like they're just generated by somebody throwing ideas at the wall. That's a fantastic name.
I was watching the game on Big Ten in 60 last night, the Wisconsin-Penn State one, and I think it was Noah Eagle. Was he on the call, Noah Eagle, or was it Ian Eagle?
On the
Wisconsin-Penn State game last week?
I don't know. Yeah.
I think it was one of them. And he said, after they said his name, I didn't know we'd get Harry Potter names, and I just started watching Harry Potter, and I'm not through all of them, but I don't remember an Atticus. Maybe all the book readers will know.
There will be one in there, I believe.
There might be an. It's just the most British sounding name. It's
true.
like you can see that kid coming up. He's one of the bullies to Prince Charles in The Crown, I think. Atticus Bertrams, even though he's an Aussie, he's got the British lineage. 46.3 yards a punt this season. He's a pretty good one coming here to Iowa City.
We'll take that. Punting's fun. I think that's the kind of beautiful part of the Iowa fandom now, is that anybody, like, they got a good punter. Like, watch out. Like, there's a respect for anybody who walks in and can flip field position and show what special teams can do. Let's talk a little bit more about Wisconsin. Take a glance at them. Again, coming off a tough-fought home loss to Penn State. We're really two-score game at the end of it, triple zeros, but that's a game that was really, really close the rest of the way. If you're watching on the YouTube channel, we got the stats up there for you. Middle of the road in scoring offense, total offense, and rush defense. They're pretty darn good when it comes to their pass defense, though, only giving up 167 yards through the air. That's 14th in the country. Pass offense lagging a little bit. It's Braden Locke back there filling in for Tyler Van Dyke, but Braden's played enough football where he's basically a one. Scoring defense in the top 25 along with total defense. Rush defense, though, middle of the pack, like we said, and they've got a little above average rush offense themselves because Wisconsin. Jamari Harris, Sebastian Castro, Deshaun Lee talking about coming off a great performance against Northwestern, getting the bad taste out of their mouths after the trip to East Lansing, and looking ahead to that battle with a very familiar Big Ten foe.
I think we have a great coaching staff who kind of has consistently harps on the same things throughout the season. So as we get later in the season, we understand, and we've heard it over multiple times, understand the importance of it and lock in at that point. So November football, and we've been playing football for 13 plus weeks.
Being here at Iowa for 6 years now, understand that this game is an important game for the state. So it's just a game you want to play in. If you really love this game, it's just you just can't wait because it's Wisconsin is going to be. It's like bragging rights really for the year. So
we're going in every game trying to win. We're trying to compete. We got the opportunity to compete, so we're doing it all with all our ability. So.
And it was good to get to talk to three secondary guys yesterday because a couple picks against Northwestern. The Badgers are 91st in the nation in turnover margin. They are -3. Iowa, I believe, off the top of my head, is in the top 20, maybe +6 or 7, something like that. This feels like another opportunity, does it to you guys, of a chance to add to some interception numbers? Iowa's 14th. They're +8 in turnover margin right now, one of the best numbers in the Big Ten. Do we see this as an opportunity again? What piques your interest when it comes to the Badger offense?
Certainly, especially with Braden Locke out there. As much as he's proven that he can at least be a passable Big Ten quarterback and lead this offense. He's thrown at least one interception in each of Wisconsin's last 5 games, 7 touchdowns to 6 interceptions this year. Not great numbers. He had a big game against Purdue, thrown for over 350 yards, but he's been a little bit up and down in terms of yardage. And so I think there's a good chance that we could see maybe another linebacker, maybe another secondary interception, maybe another couple of them coming this week.
Yeah, I'm hesitant to say that just because the last time we said that was against Michigan State, and I think they only got 1, right? And they dropped to another pick. Yeah. But, as much as many games as Braden Locke has played, I was watching the game, and I understand they were playing Penn State, the number 3 team in the country. He didn't look all that good to me.
The pick 6 that kind of helped separate things, that was
cost him the game. Not cost him the game, but it did flip the game. And he had a lot of missed throws. There were 5 drops on the receivers, too. I questioned their skill players. They run predominantly out of shotgun and still try to run the ball. I think it's going to come down to, can Iowa get pressure on him? Because Penn State could, and that made Braden just wildly inaccurate. The other thing that makes me worry is, I thought Penn State had good, their defensive backs were playing a little more press than Iowa does, and they were making it so there was no lanes to throw. Iowa generally likes to have things in front of them, catch the ball. And if that's the case, I think Braden could get into a little rhythm. So I don't expect Phil to blitz early because he usually waits until the second half later in the game to bring pressure. But I think you need to not let him get into a rhythm. But that's the one thing I'm concerned about is, are they going to let him get in the rhythm? Are they going to let him kind of get those underneath routes and kind of get a good footing under him?
Another kind of side-by-side comparison between the two teams in terms of turnovers is fumbles. Iowa has only fumbled the ball 7 times this year, only lost 2 fumbles this season. That's pretty good numbers, I'd say, overall. Wisconsin has fumbled the ball 13 times, 7 lost fumbles overall. Pretty big numbers for guys who can't hold on to the ball.
The offensive line now in Wisconsin coached by A.J. Blazik, former Hawkeye himself. So they've, and we talked about the Iowa ties on Monday a little bit. You've got Mike Tressel, who's a former Cornell Ram. He's your DC, has been for a couple of years there, and his teammate there in Mount Vernon, Matt Mitchell, former Grand Valley State head coach, linebackers coach there in Madison as well. Well, we talked about maybe the opportunity for the offense, or for the defense, I should say, to get some pressure on the Badger offense. And Max Llewellyn out of Urbandale has been pretty special in this rotation on the D-line. We were wondering, boy, Logan Lee is gone, Joe Evans is gone. Who's going to step up? You got Deontay Craig there. You've got Aaron Graves, who's had a lot of hopes for him and what he was going to do coming in. Ethan Herkett had a big breakout year last year, but Max Llewellyn, 3.5 sacks this season, a fumble recovery, had the big safety against Northwestern after review on Saturday, and has 3 pass deflections this season. He is a long, lanky guy who, as you're going to hear, was far lankier when he was in high school and working to get some weight on. But our Hawkeye highlight this week, Max Llewellyn having a heck of a year on the D-line for Iowa in that rotation, making an impact. We talked about that safety on Saturday, his road to Iowa City, and his exuberance and how he displays it when there is a big play, and he's made plenty of them this year.
Walk us through that safety.
Yeah, I mean, that was, it's kind of tough to describe with words what that feels like, but obviously, the work that I've been doing the past 3 years that nobody sees, when that comes to light, you can only imagine the feeling. But I also want to emphasize, the other guys, if the guys in the back end weren't so good or my other linemen weren't, collapsing the pocket, that wouldn't have happened. So it wasn't just me, it was everybody else. That was a team safety. So
did you kind of know that you had it because they reviewed it?
I mean, I don't really know the rule, if I'm being honest. I saw his knee down in the end zone. I was like, obviously I'm going to try and sell it, Yeah. But to be honest, I didn't really know. So maybe got away with one.
I think it was last year you almost recovered a fumble against Western Michigan. It was like going out of bounds. Now it feels like anytime there's an opportunity to make a play, you've made it. Is that just an extra year experience, taking advantage of opportunity? What is it? Because it feels like there's been a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing is, last year, going out there, it's, you're in front of 70,000 people, and it's kind of hard to think, and, you're just so eager to make a play, and sometimes, I'm a lot more comfortable out there this year, when I'm able to, relax, see what I'm seeing and, be able to execute.
What was your path here like as a recruit, being a Central Iowa kid? Did you grow up wanting to be a Hawk, or how'd that go?
I didn't really, to be honest, out of high school, I was JV sophomore year, and, it was my first year playing DN, junior year, so, fingers crossed, maybe I get to go to UNI or something. But I didn't really know like what the plan was. Like I liked, Iowa, I liked Iowa State. I didn't really have a preference. I'm just, lucky to be here.
Was it Kelvin was your recruiter or who was it?
Neiman was the guy. He was my guy. Yep.
What did he sell you on?
The culture here. I just love that. You take a look at some other schools, and they're. I'm not a big rah-rah guy, and I just think Iowa's such a good school because it's just all business here, and I love it. It's just the culture's great. It's pretty much the selling point for me.
You're not a big rah-rah guy, but I feel like nobody's more demonstrative in their celebrations. You're up there
except for when I'm out there.
Yeah.
That's true. But yeah, I agree.
What allowed you to make that leap, like in high school, to take your kind of game?
It was just. I was pretty small. My sophomore year, I was like 6'3", 160. Like I was a tiny, skinny kid. So I was really just, working hard to gain as much weight as possible. And I didn't really have a whole lot of technique in high school. I kind of just ran as fast as I could to the ball. And now that I'm here, I've been able to polish some things up, and it's been working out.
Yeah, I'd say.
Guys, I'm ashamed of myself. Yesterday, we had a first for media days for me. I had to go up to James Allen, and say, who is that? I'd never seen Max Llewellyn without a helmet on. I'd never met him on media days. He's never been made available to the media either after the game or on a Tuesday. I'd never seen this guy before. I had no idea he had red hair even.
No, yeah, not often that you walk up and ask, hey, who's the 6'5", 260 kid? I can't place him, but boy, he's made a name for himself. I do remember the last year, it was the back end of that Western Michigan game, and I asked him about almost recovering the fumble. I forget who forced it, but it was the far sideline, and he was chasing out of bounds, and I was like, who's 48? You just kind of keep stock of who these twos are that are getting in, and boy, he is, again, if you were watching on the YouTube channel, just every sack, the safety, the fumble recovery, that young man is hyped to be a Hawkeye, hyped to be out there. And I really appreciated the transparency of just like, last year, man, there's 70,000 people. You're just trying to do your job and trying to get through. And I also appreciated him just, people don't see the work that gets put in, and there's so many guys like that on the roster that are off the two deeps, but they're working hard and they get an opportunity, and boy, he's seized it. He's been as good as any of the new faces, and there aren't a lot of them on that defense because you've got so many guys back, but boy, 48, you know who he is now for sure.
Yeah, a story that keeps coming up this season that I don't know if this is more than other Big Ten teams or more than the average across the country, but guys who were not big football players until late in their careers. Jamari Harris even said that he really
was a basketball guy.
Yeah, until his junior year of high school was the first time he'd played football, I think. So these guys that maybe didn't come up through the system, if you will, of football, and then just kind of developed late. Maybe their body filled out a little bit more. Something sparked in them that made them a good player. I don't want to get into an inspirational speech for a high school player that things can develop and things can turn around for you if you put the work in. But it is just interesting that there are so many guys that can play at the Power 4 level, competing for bowl games. Jamari Harris is going to be a draft pick, one of the best defensive backs in the country. Max Llewellyn, emerging star on that defense, and guys that were not highly recruited, guys who basically had one offer coming out of high school. The receiver that had the touchdown a couple weeks ago, Iowa was his only offer.
Dayton Howard,
yeah. These are good stories that you just don't expect, especially when you're used to watching the Alabamas, the LSUs, the USCs of the world, where it's all four-star guys who've been elite since they were in sixth grade. That you forget about stories like this.
Yeah, I'm still waiting for I'm 34 and my body to fill out, maybe get a couple inches on the height scale.
Drink your milk, eat your vitamins, yeah.
No, yeah, and this pass rush is something that I think we can all agree has been up and down all season, and a good Iowa defense starts with the front four. And take the numbers for what you will from Pro Football Focus, but he's rated as the second best pass rusher on Iowa's team right now. Ethan Hurkett is graded a little higher. Wow. Max is second. So, 3 sacks on the year. It's encouraging to see. And, hopefully they can, get pressure this weekend, because I do think that's going to be one of the key factors in the game.
Yeah, I would love to see, Y.A. Black had the safety last year in Madison, and we talked about a guy who doesn't put up the numbers maybe. We're talking about Max's numbers, but don't tell me Y.A. Black doesn't have an impact in the trenches there. And, you've got, Kenneth Merriweather, who's a redshirt freshman out of Detroit King High School, one of the big powers there on the east side of Michigan and across the entire state, got his first career sack, half sack, and you saw how jubilant he was if you were watching some of the video we shared earlier this week. And yeah, it's just been fun to see that when that D-line is playing its best, that is a tough front four for any defense to go up against. And you hope what they were able to do last year against Wisconsin can show up again Saturday.
It's really been a year where I think we have to give Kelvin Bell a lot of credit for what he's done with this defensive line because, again, I think as we started the season, this was a unit that we thought, there was not a lot of depth, we thought, to this defensive line.
There's a lot of leadership to replace there, too, with Logan and Joe going.
Yeah. And they've turned out to be maybe one of the deepest parts of this roster, just guys that continue to come in there and fill in and make big plays. That is a tough front line for Iowa, the front four.
This is not right defensive video that I thought it was going to be.
No, so if you're watching on YouTube, well, this works out too because again, when you get pressure from the front four, you're able to open up opportunities for interceptions. Iowa's got 10 of them this season, and that's one of the best celebrations of all time between Nick Jackson and Jay Higgins. Jay Higgins, who would have thought he'd be tied for the team lead in interceptions going into Week 9 of the season, 9th game of the season, but he's been terrific, and boy, as good of a linebacker as anywhere in the country. We already knew that coming in. Jamari having a heck of a year too, and going to be fun to see what these guys can do under the lights at Kinnick Stadium. Your last 2 home games of 2024 get to be night games against 2 of your more bitter rivals in the Big Ten, and again, going into November when you need to be playing your best. A lot of vibes we had into these Final 4 regular season games.
I know we've maybe talked about these before, which rivalries for the three of us as either fans or people who cover the sport grew up in Iowa. What does the Wisconsin game mean to you guys? I mean, is this on the upper echelon of rivalry games that you care about, or is there any Wisconsin memories that you guys hold in particular esteem?
When I was growing up, I think Iowa State was always number 1 because I'm Fort Dodge, and I feel like half the town is Cyclones, half the town is Hawkeyes. So in Central Iowa, it's a little bit different. But I think Wisconsin was the number 2 because Minnesota wasn't, I didn't think they were that great, when I was forming my Hawkeye fandom, but Wisconsin was number 2. I remember, ending Barry Alvarez's career at Wisconsin with a loss because Iowa and Wisconsin used to end the season on and off with Iowa and Minnesota.
Forgot about that.
Yeah, so I remember kind of those memories. I'm a little too young to remember Ron Dane running over Iowa's defense, but the win in 2004 to seal a Big Ten championship, Tate DeSolom in that game, and awesome memories from that game, and we kind of had their number for a while. But Nebraska's moving up there too, with that rivalry. Almost each time they play them, I feel, or each time Iowa plays one of those 4 teams, I feel like they go to the top of the list and they get recycled.
I do, and maybe you can speak to this too, Mike, of the rivalry, at least from our perspective as fans, alums, is more driven by the fans and alums. It's less about the product on the field. I mean, it's still important, but I think the reason a lot of Iowa fans are really getting into the Nebraska rivalry is because Nebraska fans notoriously just talk about the 90s and all that. And listen, Matt Rule's going to be awesome. Please stay out of the comments.
Is he?
Fans.
No, I'm just kidding.
I think he's going to be great. But, that's the narrative is they're stuck in the past and they won't stop talking about it. We all loved Eric Crouch. I mean, it's for good reason. I mean, I remember Blake Tiki was a heck of a safety from Cedar Rapids, Jefferson, late 90s here in the area. He went to Nebraska. And I remember watching KCRG and John Campbell doing, weekly reports on how Blake was doing in Lincoln. I mean, that was a massive, massive deal. It was huge, and so I think there were maybe some Nebraska fans around here for a while because there was an Eastern Iowa kid playing for the Cornhuskers. That was a big deal. The Hayden Fry era was kind of dwindling down here, and Kirk was getting things going. So I feel like there's always kind of been that, and now in the Big Ten that expands. Wisconsin to me always feels like there's a lot of respect there.
I was just going to say that.
I don't know if it's Barry,
mutual respect.
It's Dan McCarney going there with Barry Alvarez, and I think there's just so many connections that it's a fierce rivalry. I think it's one of the fun ones that you get those kind of wonky Big Ten West throwback scores. We just saw it last year in Madison. We saw it in 2015. I remember the Gazette headline of bullies of the Big Ten return or something like that. Final score in that one was 12-6 or something like that, or another 15-6 games, something like that. It feels like one of the best rivalries because there's not as much hatred.
Yeah.
Maybe. It's just 2 teams that everybody outside of the rivalry holds in high esteem. Okay, whether it was Kirk and Barry or Kirk and Brett, or whoever it may be, now Kirk and Luke, just these are two teams that everybody outside the Big Ten even says, oh, you know what you're getting with them. They're tough physical teams. And I think that's what builds up Iowa, Wisconsin, is that it's just everybody is anxious to see what goes on there, because I think they just have such admiration for what those programs have been for 30 some odd years.
I wonder how much of that too is based on the fact that like Iowa didn't own this rivalry for a lot of years. I mean, both with Minnesota and with Iowa State, I feel like Iowa was pretty in control of that rivalry for a long time. Whereas Wisconsin, they've been the better team in the Big Ten for a lot of those years. It's been back and forth. So there's maybe more mutual respect because there's never been a like a big brother in this rivalry. It's been the one
to chase. Yeah. I do feel like that for sure.
I do think, though, and this is where I can't remember, but during Hayden Fry's years, they won from 77 to 96. They didn't lose to Wisconsin.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Until Bo got there in the early 90s and changed things around. Then Wisconsin won 5 in a row. So, I mean, we're too young for that. Let's just say we're young. But
for once.
In the 80s and 70s, I don't think they were that good.
Okay.
But you're right, in the last 25, 30 years, it has been back and forth, and it has been kind of a, one team will pull off 3 or 4 wins, and next, after that, then Iowa will jump ahead, then Wisconsin will jump ahead. And one of the memories, too, and when I was in college, 2010, remember that fake punt? Brett had the gall to call a fake punt inside his own 30-yard line.
Brad Norman. I still remember that game, and I might be mixing up with Ohio State. If you're watching on YouTube or just listening on audio, I'm typing and looking up the Iowa football schedule from. I do remember it was either that or the Ohio State loss that ended all chances of a Big Ten title chase, and I feel like it might have been that one. Whichever one was later in the game.
I feel like those were both back-to-back weeks, and they were both equally crushing.
It was the Wisconsin loss was the second one. I think that's what ended. It was the first loss of the year, and then they lost to Northwestern and then Ohio State. But I remember that Wisconsin one, 31-30.
James White scores the winning touchdown.
I remember guys in the post game being in tears because that was all these guys come back. There were such high hopes. A lot like
this year.
A lot like the Michigan State loss, where all of a sudden some preseason goals were just completely dropped off the table. And I think I remember some tough dudes shedding tears after that game, and not a fun end to that whole campaign there in 2010. But yeah, Wisconsin, there's some tough memories in that one too. But again, you look at last year too, and that's a tough one for them to swallow, and that's rivalry football and college football. It's a beautiful thing.
The all-time record between these two teams, Iowa trails Wisconsin 46-49, and then 2 ties in the series. They've won 2 in a row, haven't won 3 in a row against Wisconsin since the early 2000s, 03 to 05. They won 3 straight against, or 4 in a row technically, but there's just been a lot less streaky wins in this series over the last couple decades.
It's been fun, and a lot of fun games this weekend in the Big Ten as we turn to our picks. Mike, you want to walk us through what's on the docket this weekend, because there are some really
big
fun
games in the Big Ten. It starts with on Fox 28 on Saturday morning with big noon kickoff. Number 4 Ohio State, 3.5-point favorites heading to Happy Valley to play the number 3 ranked Nittany Lions of Penn State.
I think Ohio State got a reality check last week against Nebraska. Penn State looked a little mortal, I think, last week. I think that Ohio State could win this one by a touchdown.
This one is so tricky since, the aforementioned Drew Aller is a game-time decision. And honestly, that does sway it for me. I think Drew just gives a little more dimension to the offense. And I think if Ohio State can just pin their ears back and stop the rush, then Penn State wouldn't have a chance. I'm going to bet that he plays, though, because they said he tested it out at halftime of the Wisconsin game and then just didn't go. I'm going to say that he does play, and I'm going to take Penn State with the points.
I'm going to take Penn State as well. I think even if they do lose, it will only be a field goal game. Listen, that Ohio State offense can cook. They're a second away from getting a field goal opportunity to walk out of Oregon with a win, but this is the biggest game for James Franklin in Happy Valley.
Oh, yeah.
In his whole tenure.
I mean, you could say it's a big game for Ryan Day, too.
It's a big one for both.
A top 5 win.
I think, talking about Bo earlier in the podcast here, they go all in on the run, and I got faith, even with all the talent that Ohio State has. That's just a different atmosphere there, and it's such a big game for Penn State. I think they were my preseason pick to maybe win the Big Ten if it wasn't Oregon or one of those. So I'll take the Nittany Lions to at least cover. It could be a heartbreaking loss, and Ohio State remedies what happened. I mean, this is a huge one for Ohio State. You know, you lose 2 games, and all of a sudden you're not going to Indy, and you might be on the outside looking into the college football playoff. So I think it will be a field goal game, and man, buckle up for Gus and Joel and Jenny. That could be a fun game. And because it's a 6:30 kick at Kinnick,
you got to watch it, yeah. 2 quick points. One thing I forgot to mention earlier, Penn State really had success against Wisconsin. They did like 6 shovel passes to the tight end. I hope Iowa works some of that in. Because they haven't done it since, I think, Iowa State. I think they did one against Iowa State. I think they could have some success against Wisconsin defense doing that. The second thing is, I saw this on Twitter. Did you know there's a scenario where Penn State, Indiana, and Oregon all go undefeated?
Yeah, isn't that
and
wild?
One of them could miss the Big Ten title game, not losing a game in conference.
Wow.
Anyway, that's probably not going to happen, but it could happen. Next game on the docket, also 11 on Fox FS1. Minnesota is a 2.5-point favorite at Illinois.
I think I've talked this year about how SVP always tells me that if there's a strange line, you kind of ride it. And this feels a little strange because Minnesota's going to Illinois, who's ranked. I mean, I know Minnesota's won 3 in a row. Illinois is coming off a loss, but it still feels like Illinois should be the team to beat in this game. So I'm a little surprised at the line. But when it's weird, you take it. So I'm going to take Minnesota.
Yeah, you know what? I did that last week with UCF on the road at BYU on the road at UCF, and BYU just blew their brains out. I'm going to take Illinois just because I think they're a better football team. They've only lost 2 games, one to Oregon on the road and one to Penn State on the road, who are top 5 teams. So I think Illinois is better. You're right, weird line. I'm not going to bet on it, but I'm going to take them in this pick 'em.
Yeah, this is a tough one. Illinois at home is different. Minnesota's played really well at home. They gave Michigan that scare where maybe they should have had opportunity to get a chance at the win. Max Brosmer, who we saw struggle in that second half against Iowa, he's your defending Big Ten Offensive Player of the Week. He looked fantastic over homecoming against Maryland for the Gophers. This Minnesota team's starting to figure some stuff out. And it wouldn't shock me if Illinois can pull this off, but I'm going to take Minnesota if they can win by a field goal. They got one of the best kickers in the Big Ten who's also starting to figure things out as well. So that is not going to be an easy one. But that's going to be a super fun one. Flip over to FS1. I know you got 2 top 5 teams playing on Fox 28, but maybe keep an eye on the Gophers and Illini.
We got another, maybe before the season we thought this would be a bigger game than it actually is, but number 1 ranked Oregon, 15.5-point favorite going to the Big House against Michigan.
I know Oregon has really looked fantastic. They have looked the part of a number 1 team the last couple of weeks. But going into the Big House, Michigan's coming off that win over Michigan State. I think that Michigan could make this a little bit more of a game than, they're really struggling right now. This season has not gone the way that Michigan would have hoped the first year without Jim Harbaugh on the sideline, but I think Michigan could keep it a little closer than 15 points.
Yeah, I last week said I don't think Michigan's a good football team, and they beat Michigan State. I still don't think Michigan's a good football team, and I think Oregon's going to win by 3 scores.
Yeah, I think it's one thing for Michigan State to go in and hang tough in the Big House and keep that close. Oregon, is just hitting a stride. They've got all the talent in the world, and I think it could be a close game, maybe a 1-score game at half, and then I think Oregon could maybe fly away with this one, no pun intended, in the second half, so I'll take the Ducks to cover.
This one's actually the Oregon game is on CBS 2. I got to plug our station. I forgot to do that.
Please watch.
UCLA 6.5-point underdog in Lincoln and Nebraska. Nebraska coming off a tough loss at Ohio State. Probably could have won that game. I didn't watch it, but I heard there was some officiating controversies about spotting the ball, at different spots. UCLA, I haven't watched a single UCLA snap all season. I don't know if you guys have.
A really impressive win against Rutgers, I think it was a couple weeks ago.
That's right.
Ethan Garbers had a huge game, a guy who's played a lot of football. I think I'm going to take Nebraska to cover, though.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. I don't have much faith in them. They did beat Rutgers, which I think I put money on it, but I was at a wedding, so I couldn't watch it.
You got to stop putting money.
I know, right?
Yeah, that win by UCLA over Rutgers had broken up their 5-game losing streak. Got them back, at least getting their first Big Ten win for the Bruins. Nebraska right now is on the precipice of getting bowl eligible again. When's their last bowl game?
2016, I think.
That's what I was thinking. So they've got 4 games left to get there. Their last 4 games are against UCLA, USC, Iowa's their last one, and they have one more in there. Wisconsin, I think they play in there as well.
UCLA, USC, Wisconsin, and Iowa.
Yeah. They just need. I think this is the game that they break through. So I think I'll go with you guys and take Nebraska in this one.
Is it the Foster Farms Bowl, their last one, against UCLA?
Wow, really?
Isn't that right?
I can look it up.
Tommy
but
Armstrong, I believe, was still the quarterback.
So
if you're listening just the audio version, you're watching us all frantically search a Foster Farms Bowl from almost a decade ago.
I'll move on to the next game then if you guys are looking it up.
That would have been It would have been 2015 because I think they got in at 5-7 maybe.
December 30th, 2016, Music City Bowl against Tennessee.
Yeah, 2015 they played UCLA in that Foster Farms Bowl, which is now, who knows what it's called. Someone else look that up.
It says the San Francisco.
Is that what it is now?
That says it on the Wikipedia page, so I'm not sure. But Wisconsin is 3.5-point underdog at Iowa, under lights at Kinnick Stadium. I'll go first on this one. I went back and forth just because I didn't want to jinx Iowa. But like I said earlier, I think, if the defensive line can get pressure on Locke, he's going to make mistakes. He's going to not be accurate. And I do think that Iowa will be able to keep the running game in check. So I think Iowa does win this by more than 4 points.
Okay. Again, I feel like I've said this the last few weeks that field goals could become a factor. Wisconsin right now is one of the leaders in the Big Ten in opponents' field goals that have been missed. 6 for 11 teams are against Wisconsin in field goal conversion. Iowa's a little bit below that. So there could be some field goal scenarios that come up in this game. I think I like Wisconsin to keep it maybe within 3 points.
Am I correct in remembering that the last time Iowa played Wisconsin under the lights at Kinnick, it wasn't that long ago, 2021? Was that a night game or at least a late game that ended under the lights?
2021, I don't remember what.
Wasn't here.
Or I'm thinking of 22, am I? Might be thinking of 22. My point is, I remember Cooper DeJean pick 6 under the lights off Graham.
That was a night game, yes.
That was 2022. So back then, I would not be shocked to see maybe another defensive touchdown. I think just the opportunities that we talked about. I think Brendan does what he's supposed to do, play mistake-free, and Iowa gets a really impressive win. I'll take them to cover. This could be a fun one. This could be a fun one. I think there will be some, and I know there's injuries. You still have Addison out. You got Rhys out, but keep an eye on stuff.
A couple kind of interesting factors to look at. Right now, I've talked before about the amount of guys who have caught a pass this year for Iowa. 17 different pass catchers now that we added Pascuzzi to that list. The number of guys who have caught a pass this year for Wisconsin, also 17. They have 6 guys who have had at least 100 yards, but no more than 400 yards. They have kind of a similar offense in that way, with just a lot of guys who they can spread the ball out to and a lot of different pass catchers. And so just 2 very similar styles, it seems like, and could lead to just what I think could be a really close game type finish.
And we get to see it under the lights at Kinnick Stadium, or if you're at home, 6:30 on NBC. We'll plug everybody there. But what an environment that's going to be to kick off November, time of year that Kirk Ferentz and company have been playing real well lately, and it's why they've ended up in Indy more often than not in those last few years, or at least playing in a good bowl game and getting a really great end to their season. We will be back on Monday at 1 o'clock to recap whatever may happen in the battle for the Heartland Trophy. Again, follow us on Eye on the Hawks on Twitter and the Iowa News Now YouTube channel. We'd love to see you streaming and subscribing there on Mondays and Wednesdays at 1. For Mike and Owen, I'm Mitch. We will see you there on Monday on the other side of this one on